Let's get right into it. Number 7. Heaven's Gate. Imagine logging onto a 90s dial-up internet forum. You know, back when the peak of technology was a pixelated GIF and the sound of AOL connecting was basically the national anthem. Now imagine stumbling across a group of people who sincerely believed they could beam themselves onto an alien spaceship by ditching their human bodies like last year's Windows update. Welcome to Heaven's Gate, the cult that turned sci-fi fan fiction into a full-blown lifestyle. Their leader, Marshall Applewhite, a man with the charisma of a substitute teacher and the haircut of a televangelist, convinced his followers that Earth was about to be recycled, not like soda cans, but like when your hard drive gets wiped. Their solution? Casually ascend into the next level by hitching a ride on a UFO supposedly hiding behind the Hale-Bopp comet in 1997. Spoiler, there was no UFO, just a lot of Nike sneakers, identical haircuts, and an unfortunate group exit strategy that involved spiked applesauce. Psychologists still look at Heaven's Gate as the ultimate case study in groupthink. When you isolate people long enough, repeat bizarre ideas like a broken record, and add in just enough science-y sounding nonsense, you can get humans to believe almost anything. Basically, Applewhite turned a Star Trek fan club into the darkest meetup group in history. Number 6. The Order of the Solar Temple. In reality, it was one of the creepiest New Age cults of the late 20th century. Founded in Switzerland in 1984, this group mixed Christianity, Freemasonry, astrology, and just a dash of "the world is ending" seasoning, which is never a good recipe. Their leaders, Joseph DeMambro and Luc Jouret, told followers they were preparing for a glorious rebirth on a star called Sirius, which, to be fair, sounds way cooler than paying rent on Earth. But here's the disturbing part. Anyone who questioned the group's authority was deemed unworthy of their shiny afterlife. And unworthy didn't mean kicked out of the club. It meant ritual sacrifice, staged as mystical ceremonies. By the 1990s, mass deaths were linked to the group in Switzerland, Canada, and France. Members were told they weren't dying, just transferring to another realm, which is really just cult speak for, you're about to get scammed out of your pulse. Psychologically, it's a perfect storm. Blend apocalyptic fear, promises of cosmic salvation, and a couple of manipulative leaders with fancy robes, and you end up with people who think ritual fire is a legit space travel method. It wasn't enlightenment. It was essentially a death cult with a better marketing department. Number 5. The People's Temple. What started as a progressive, racially inclusive church in the 1950s spiraled into one of the deadliest cult disasters in history. Jones was the kind of guy who preached about love and equality while simultaneously demanding absolute loyalty and hoarding prescription drugs like a walking CVS pharmacy. By the 1970s, he relocated his followers to Guyana, South America, to form a so-called utopia called Jonestown. Spoiler, it wasn't utopia. It was more like summer camp run by a dictator who never slept and thought microphones were an extension of his vocal cords. Every single moment of their lives was controlled. Members worked long hours, endured constant surveillance, and listened to Jones's rambling sermons blasting over loudspeakers 24/7. Imagine trying to sleep while your boss is live podcasting about the apocalypse outside your window. No thank you. Then came the infamous end in 1978, when U.S. officials showed up to investigate. Jones panicked. His solution? Convincing over 900 people, including children, to drink cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. That's why drinking the Kool-Aid is now slang for blind devotion. And while the phrase gets tossed around casually, the reality was terrifying. It was one of the largest mass deaths in modern history. Psychologically, Jonestown was the ultimate example of how charisma, fear, and control can warp logic. Once you're isolated, cut off from family, and emotionally dependent on a leader, even drinking poison can feel like loyalty. Basically, Jones hacked human psychology and used it like malware. Number 4. Aum Shinrikyo. This group combined elements of Buddhism, Hinduism, and apocalyptic doomsday fantasies. On the surface, it looked like a spiritual movement. Underneath, it was a terrorist organization with a chemical weapons starter pack. Asahara told his followers that World War III was imminent, and only by joining him could they survive the end of the world. That's Cult Playbook 101. Scare the hell out of people, then sell yourself as the only solution. He also declared himself both Christ and the reincarnation of Buddha, which is kind of like calling yourself the CEO of Earth. But here's where things escalated. In 1995, members of Aum Shinrikyo carried out a sarin gas attack in the Tokyo subway system, killing 13 people and injuring thousands. A literal domestic terror attack, planned by a so-called religious leader who thought mass murder was a spiritual cleansing exercise. Psychologists point out how Asahara used classic brainwashing, sleep deprivation, sensory overload, and constant fear-mongering. Mix that with a promise of being part of a chosen elite, and suddenly people are making chemical weapons in a basement instead of, doing normal hobbies like knitting. Aum Shinrikyo showed the world how dangerous cults can get when spiritual delusion meets actual weapons-grade ambition. This wasn't just creepy robes and chanting, it was apocalypse cosplay with a body count. Number 3. Heaven's Gate. Picture this. You're told Earth is basically a lost cause. Your body is just a container, and salvation lies in ditching your human form to board a spaceship hiding behind a comet. Sounds like bad sci-fi, right? Well, to the members of Heaven's Gate, it was their entire belief system. Founded by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, this cult was a blend of New Age spirituality, UFO fanaticism, and we swear we're not just LARPing Star Trek energy. Applewhite, in particular, had that hypnotic, slightly manic preacher vibe that could make even the most skeptical person question reality. He told his followers that aliens were waiting to take their souls to a higher level of existence. But first, they had to shed their earthly attachments. Translation: say goodbye to your family, your possessions, and in some cases, your literal body parts. Yeah, some members actually underwent castration to suppress earthly desires, which is the kind of dedication that makes deleting social media look like child's play. The endgame came in 1997, when 39 members were found dead in a California mansion after a mass suicide. They believed that by leaving their human vessels behind, they'd ascend to that spaceship behind the Hale-Bopp comet. The scene was chilling: identical clothing, matching sneakers, and carefully laid out beds. It looked like the creepiest slumber party of all time. Hosted by E.T., his weirder cousin, the psychology behind Heaven's Gate is both fascinating and tragic. Applewhite tapped into existential dread, the feeling that life is meaningless, and we're all just waiting to die anyway. But instead of embracing therapy or, yoga, they embraced alien salvation with a side of Kool-Aid level devotion. Number 2. The Order of the Solar Temple. This one sounds like a Harry Potter fan club gone wrong, but nope. It was a real-life doomsday cult. Founded in the 1980s by Joseph DiMambro and Luc Jouret, the Order of the Solar Temple combined New Age mysticism, conspiracy theories, and a lot of medieval knight cosplay. Members believed in reincarnation, secret rituals, and that they were preparing for the end of the world by joining the chosen few. The cult had all the dramatic flair of a Renaissance fair mixed with the paranoia of a late-night conspiracy forum. Think secret robes, candlelit ceremonies, and leaders convincing members they were spiritual royalty destined for greatness. Spoiler alert, they weren't. Things got horrifying in the 1990s when the group orchestrated mass murder-suicides in Switzerland and Canada. We're talking about over 70 deaths in fires, shootings, and poisonings, all staged as if they were elaborate transits to a higher plane of existence. Some victims were killed because they tried to leave, while others went along willingly, convinced this was their ticket to eternal glory. Basically, the Solar Temple was like a medieval role-playing club that forgot where the game ended and reality began, with devastating consequences. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.